How's it going, everyone? Austin Honecker here. I just wanted to come on here for a while and give him a review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dark from last night, which was November 30th, 2021. I gotta say, it was awesome from start to finish. For the matches, match 1, it was The Pinnacle, which are Wardlow and Shawn Spears versus Bear Country, which are Bear Bronson and Bear Boulder. That was a great match, but the ending to it, The Pinnacle went over because Wardlow pinned Bear Bronson with the Casualty of War. Match 2, it was Kylan King versus Renee Michelle. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Kylan King went over with the Kingdom Falls. That was match 2, by the way. Match 3, it was Proud and Powerful, which are Santana and Ortiz versus Gus De La Vega and Brandon Gore. That was a squash match, but the ending to it, Proud and Powerful went over because Santana pinned Gus De La Vega by the OIC from Santana and Ortiz. Match 4, it was Sky Blue versus La Rosa Negra. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Sky Blue went over with a spinning flatliner. Match 5, it was 5 versus Mike Reed. That was a squash match, but the ending to it, 5 went over with the Wing Snapper. Match 6, it was Ryo Mizunami versus Danny Jordan. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Ryo Mizunami went over with the Power Slam. That was match 6, by the way. Match 7, it was The Butcher versus Michael Martinez. That was a squash match, but the ending to it, The Butcher went over with a spinning side slam. Well, before the match, The Butcher attacked Michael Martinez and was beating the shit out of him and everything. That was cool. That was match 7, by the way. Match 8, it was Julia Hart versus Nikita Knight. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Julia Hart went over with the split bulldog. Match 9, it was Infinito versus Ray Jazz. That was a squash match, but the ending to it, Infinito went over with a schoolboy. That was match 9, by the way. Match 10, it was Layla Hirsch versus Sahara 7. That was a squash match, but wait a minute. Match 10, it was Layla Hirsch versus Sahara 7. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Layla Hirsch went over with the cross arm breaker. Match 11, it was the Varsity Blondes. That was match 10, by the way. Match 11, it was the Varsity Blondes, which are Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison, versus the Factory, which are Aaron Solo and Nick Camarado. That was a great match, but the ending to it, the Varsity Blondes went over because Brian Pillman Jr. pinned Nick Camarado with a rolling elbow sunset flip combination from Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr. Well, after the match, Tony Schiavone interviewed the Varsity Blondes, which are Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison, along with Julia Hart, and Tony Schiavone was talking about how the Varsity Blondes have been on top this year and everything, and Tony Schiavone asked the Varsity Blondes what their next move was, and and Griff Garrison talked about how the Varsity Blondes were going to go after the AEW Tag Team titles sooner than later and everything. And Brian Pillman Jr. talked about how the Young Bucks, which are Matt and Nick Jackson, and FTR, which are Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, talk about how they're the future of the AEW Tag Team division. And Brian Pillman Jr. talked about how him and Griff Garrison were the now, and they were going after the AEW Tag Team titles and everything. That was cool. That was match 11, by the way. And that was after the match, by the way. Match 12. Yeah. Match 12. It was Tony Nese versus DeMarcio Jackson. That was a squash match, but the ending... Wait. Match 12, it was Tony Nese versus DeMarcio James. That was a squash match, but the ending to it, Tony Nese went over with the running Nese. Match 13, it was... Match 13, it was the Hardy Family Office, which are Matt Hardy and Jorah Joel versus Prince Agbala and Baron Black. That was a great match, but the ending to it, the Hardy Family Office went over because Matt Hardy pinned Prince Agbala by the twist of fate. That was match 13, by the way. Match 14, it was Ethan Page versus... Wait. Match 14, it was Ethan Page versus Fuego del Sol. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Ethan Page went over with the Ego's Edge. And match 15, which was the main event, it was Adam Cole versus Anthony Green. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Adam Cole went over with the Boom. Now, besides the matches, Alex Marvez interviewed Fuego del Sol. Well, Alex Marvez was talking about how Too Fast, Too Fuego, which are Fuego 1 and Fuego 2, have been on top since they've arrived in AEW. And then Alex Marvez was even asking Fuego del Sol about his opponent, Ethan Page, and everything. And Fuego del Sol talked about how Ethan Page has an ego and how he thinks he's it, and talked about how he was going to kick Fuego, how he was going to kick Ethan Page's ass and everything. That was cool. Now, besides all that, Taz and Excalibur done commentary throughout the whole show. They done awesome as usual. And the referees for the event were Rick Knox, Paul Turner, Bryce Remsburg, and Andre DeSanta. Okay. Rick Knox refereed the match between The Pinnacle versus Bear Country. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between Kylan King versus Renee Michelle. Paul Turner refereed the match between Proud and Powerful versus Gus De La Vega and Brandon Gore. That was Paul Turner, by the way. Andre DeSanta refereed the match between Sky Blue versus La Rosa Negra. Rick Knox refereed the match between Rick Knox refereed the match between Five versus Mike Reed. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between Ryo Mizunami versus Danny Jordan. It was Bryce Remsburg, by the way. Paul Turner refereed the match between The Butcher versus Michael Martinez. That was Paul Turner, by the way. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between Julia Hart versus Nikita Knight. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between Infinito versus Ray Jazz. Paul Turner refereed the match between Layla Hirsch versus Sahara 7. Rick Knox refereed the match between the Varsity Blondes versus the Factory. Bryce Remsburg, that was Rick Knox, by the way. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between Tony Nese versus... Wait a minute. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between Tony Nese versus DeMarcio James. That was Bryce Remsburg, by the way. Rick Knox refereed the match between... Rick Knox refereed the match between the Hardy Family Office versus Prince Agbala and Baron Black. Rick Knox refereed the match between Ethan Page versus Fuego del Sol, and Paul Turner refereed the match between Adam Cole versus Anthony Green. All the referees done awesome as usual. Now, the match card for All Elite Wrestling's... Now, the match card that's been announced so far for tonight's episode of... Now, the match card that's been announced... the match card that's been announced so far for tonight's episode of All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite, it's going to be Sting and Darby Allin versus the Gunn Club, which are Billy and Colton Gunn. Cody Rhodes versus Andrade El Idolo in an Atlanta street fight. CM Punk versus Lee Moriarty. Bryan Danielson versus Five. And Ruby Soho versus Chris Statlander. Those are the matches that have been announced so far. So the match card for tonight's episode of All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dynamite looks like it's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see it. Looking forward to it. But anyway, I just wanted to come on here for a while and give them a review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dark from last night, which was November 30th, 2021. Like I said, it was awesome from start to finish. And with that being said, my name is Austin Honecker, and I will catch your ass down the road. Peace out.